Welcome to the Manifesting Millions podcast. And today, in the Rich Auntie Life series, we are talking about how to fix the bag when the bag is broken. Okay. Before we dive in, I want you to head over to Rashida.ai and grab your millionaire freebie. Come back over here and spend some time with us as we talk about how to rebuild your bag. And what inspired this episode is literally like I was talking to some clients and they were giving me their story and talking about how they had to rebuild and start over from scratch and asking me if I had any tips to help them get to the bag sooner. And of course, I got the tips. I always got the tips. And because they're building a house, it's going to be anywhere from 4 to 6 months before they close. And actually, that's not necessarily true. Depending on what they decide as a final version of it. If they find something that's halfway complete, they can close in 30 to 60 days, to be honest with you. And so we are working through their desires and wants and their absolute needs. And then we're trying to figure out how to bypass anything that may need to be addressed in regards to their credit, their income, in regards to their job history. And so trust and believe there's always a way to back into something if you can't take the front door. I always just say that it's easier to go through the front door if you have all of your stuff in order. But if it's not in order, as so many people that we come across, we live life and life happens. And so now there's that rare occasion you're going to come across some people who have 800 credit scores and they've never had a credit blemish on their credit. They've never paid a bill late. They've never missed a payment on anything. And for those people, I say kudos to you. But if you are like the rest of us who had to learn the hard way and then get your stuff together, like for me, it was in my early 20s when I was in college that I knew nothing about credit cards and I got a credit card. And then I was like, oh, this is cool. I got extra money. And then somewhere across the way, I didn't realize that I probably needed to start paying it when they started sending me those angry messages to my P.O. box in college. Okay. And for most Americans, like that's where we start taking on debt. My goal for my kid has always been for me to alleviate the debt trap for him as long as I possibly can. And I'm not saying you're going to be able to get through life without taking on some type of debt. Again, I've been in the finance game for 18, 19 years, I guess, as of April 6th. When debt is used constructively, it can absolutely be a powerful tool to build wealth. But the way most people use debt is you're in credit card debt, you're in car loan debt, you're in student loan debt, you just keep digging yourself into a hole. I had a moment this morning. I'm getting ready to renew the registration for my car here in Texas. So, just like any other state, you have to renew. And then I started sitting there logically thinking, I'm like, you make us pay 20 plus $1,000 for this car. Marinate on that. And then on top of that, we have to maintain insurance and pay somebody else to quote unquote be safe from accidents that may or may not happen. And what ends up happening 9 times out of 10 with car insurance is that for the rare occasion that you're in an accident, you use your insurance like once, maybe every 4 or 5 years. I don't know about you, but me. So I had an accident in 2019, and that was my first accident in 13 years. And so I had, like, if you sit back and think about the fact that you've been paying insurance companies for 13 years for the possibility of being safe, like, sit and think about that. And I'm going to be honest, as I was telling my son this morning, so we pay for the car, then they make us pay a fee on the car every year to register the car to be in a system. And then we continuously have to pay money for insurance. It's like a never ending trap of debt in this country, literally. And like I said, while I a champion behind debt when it's used constructively to build assets, to build economy, to build wealth, I am not a fan of the consumer debt trap that so many of us get caught up in on the way to just trying to better ourselves in regards to building this American dream. I am not for that. And I bought my house, my dream house. We bought our dream house 5 years ago. Quotes around dream house. Because that same concept of what your car is, take that, apply that to $500,000. Now you have this property that you have to maintenance. Now that you have purchased it, and then now you have taxes that you have to pay. I don't know about y'all, but in Texas, we pay in excess of $10,000 worth of taxes every year on our properties. Now, if your kids go to school in the area, you utilize the facilities in the area, I get it, I understand. But if the schools in your area are straight shit like the ones in our area are, and they refuse to build any additional schools for like the high school, because my kid is in high school, and the school is overcrowded up to like 1,000 to 2,000 people, you let me know whether or not you're gonna put your child in that system and get swallowed up in there. I had my son in that system for a year and I yanked him out. He was exposed to so much bad stuff that I had worked my whole life to put him in environments where we didn't have those issues. And in a year, it almost undid 10 years of work. Now, granted, because of me being the stern parent I am, and I knew from the first day that we walked in there that it wasn't going to work. I just knew it. I felt it. Your intuition speaks very loud. But anyway, take those concepts and apply those concepts to a house. Now you have utilities. We're just coming off the winter months. It's still cold here in Texas and it's mid-April. It's still getting down to 30, 40 degrees at night. So we're flopping back and forth between running air and then running heat, of course. My light bill for the past 3 months has been $1,000. Same house, same units. My utility bill. Marinate on that for a sec. And like, as the cost of life just continues to go up, you guys are wondering why people are running for the hills to get away from this country. This is why. Like, you will be in a continuous debt trap for the rest of your life living here in America. And I am just speaking absolute truth today because as I near the end of the journey in regards to secondary education and we transition to college, which is another what? 50 to $100,000 expense. Is it really worth my son going to school for me to be spending all that money just so he can have a piece of paper? I am educated. My mother is educated. My mother worked in her field. She was an art education major in college and she became an art teacher. And I don't know that being an art teacher was her dream, but being in some form of artistry was the dream for her. I went to college and majored in English. I am a businesswoman. I work in finance. Nothing I learned in college outside of the soft skills in managing relationships and people has served me. Nothing I learned in a book. And again, let me emphasize the fact that every lesson that I learned wasn't in a classroom. It was outside of the classroom. And it was me building my people skills that got me to the next level. Each time I have ascended into a new level of, again, quote unquote, success by the old definition of what we were initially taught from the baby boomer and Gen X generation. Like, I don't know if it's because I've turned 40, but I feel like I have been, because of the pandemic we went through, because everything that's been going on, I just feel like I have been in a constant state of conscious awakening times infinity and really stepping back and looking around and being like, all of this shit is like a setup. You are even, and this is what really bothers me as the girl who does the right thing all the time, who's always looking for a solution, who's always trying to be fair, who's always trying to serve. The person next to you is not doing that. So it don't matter how good you are. Maybe it matters to you, you're conscious. I literally have watched people ascend higher than me because they were willing to lie, manipulate, and cheat the system over and over again. And because I wasn't willing to do it, sometimes I got like sometimes I got overlooked in stuff because I wasn't willing to compromise my values and myself in order to get ahead. And boy, this society is made of people who would step over their mama to get ahead in life. I don't care whether it's family, I don't care whether it's friends. It is literally a dog eat dog world out here. And at some point of living here, I am hoping that everyone has an awakening. You gotta take a step back and be like, there has to be something more than this. Now, granted, I know we have to go to work, pay our bills, take care of our family. I get that part. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But what I am saying is there has to be something more to life than continuing down the path of what we've been doing for the past however many years. From 40 to 45, I feel like my life has literally been standing still in a doorway. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just having one of those moments where I am looking around and taking stock of the choices and the decisions that I've made in my life. And I'm not saying that there is anything wrong with my life. I'm not saying that by any means. I am simply saying that there has to be a way for us to figure out how to get ahead in this system without constantly having to sacrifice ourselves to the capitalist monster of going into debt just to get ahead. And then they always tell you the lie of invest in yourself. Invest in yourself now, think about it later. Pay it off later. That's what you're doing with your education when you go to a 4-year university. And I'm talking about the fact that I'm not just talking from someone who's just been to an HBCU. I have been to the best institutions in this country. My graduate school was at Vanderbilt University in Nashville. I've had graduate education for the past few years at Harvard University out of Boston. I know what it's like to be on the other side and then to get to the other side and then get just a little frustrated with the fact that why didn't I learn all of this, what you're teaching me here at Harvard, when I was 20? Because this is the real information right here that, of course, everybody doesn't get access to because they don't have the funds to pay for it. And so I'm just in a place of reflection and asking questions of I see what my grandparents were talking about, especially my grandfather, where they would say that the struggle is real. And then here's another perspective. If you're African American in this country, all of the stuff that comes with being Black in America, the racism, the psychological programming, the psychological weight of having to bear the burden of the way people treat us literally because the color of our skin is brown. The stress of worrying about your safety. Like, is it really worth it to be like, I'm an American? I live the American dream every day. When you could just go to another country, leave the past generational genocide of slavery that was done to you and your ancestors behind, reset your karma and start over. When I tell y'all, I have been in such a deep contemplative mode over the past, I said, however many years. I'm just at a phase in my life that I'm really figuring out some stuff, especially if you're Black in America and the only thing you were given was struggle. And every time you try to move ahead, every time you try to take a step, there are 20 to 100 people sitting there trying to knock you back down to your size, to your place, because how dare you have the audacity to even think that you can be up here with me, considering the fact that your skin is darker than mine. Like, yo, why would we continue to put ourselves through it is the question that I'm asking. And as I'm thinking about my son coming of age, I'm thinking about his safety. I'm thinking about his experience. We could go to another country. He could go to school for free because we are foreigners, at least for however many years. And then all of the countries that have all of these programs now that want you to come work if you're an American who is educated, who has a certain skill set. They want you to come work and contribute to their economy to make their economy better. Why would we continue to subject ourselves to the struggle and the strain of what's been handed down if all we can get is a half a leg up? Y'all, you may not know anything about being a minority in America. I get it. Okay. But I am just speaking as a Black woman in America coming from a family who was considered wealth oriented in regards to land value. But still, even amongst the people in my family, honey, like they will knock over their mama, their daddy, to get a leg up on somebody and hate for the fact that you got something that they don't have. They trying to figure out how to tear you down. This is where I, unfortunately, come from. And that is the environment that we were raised in. It was a competitive, constant, materialistic environment about who was buying what, whose house was bigger than whose, who had the most money. Like, when, and because we were the poorest ones, my mother was a teacher, eventually a single parent who filed bankruptcy. Like I said, my grandparents helped raise me because I was the last surprise baby. She just didn't have. So I grew up without from my mother's perspective, but living next door to my grandparents who had finally gotten a leg up in life in their 40s and 50s and built a brand new house that was 2,200 square feet in the 70s was unheard of back then for Black folks to be doing it. And you know what my grandfather was thinking about during that time? He didn't want the house. He said he had just started making money with the farm and he was asking my grandmother to wait. But she pitched a fit because she had dedicated her life to serving him and their family and their kids and building a legacy. She wanted her house. And I can see why. She deserved it. With every fiber of her being, she deserved it. But at the same time, the amount of debt that he had to go into in order to give her that just stressed him out that much more. That's probably what put him in a dang grave 30 years later. And just thinking, like, had he decided not to build the house and take on, at the time, I think maybe $150,000 of debt, I wonder what the differences would have been and how that would have made a difference in the way he was building the family business that he had no choice but to take over. I relate so well to my grandfather. Number one, he was born in September, just like me. He went to Tennessee State University, just like me. My grandfather took on the responsibility of coming back home when his father got sick and taking over the family business. And so for me, it didn't quite play out like that, thankfully. But I was the first grandkid who went to college of our generation, and then so much pressure fell on me from that because everybody else that had gone before me had flunked out, fumbled the bag, and I performed. I went to Tennessee State University. I did not miss a beat. I did not miss a year. I performed. I participated. I got scholarships. I was the model citizen of a university and did everything that my parents and grandparents wanted me to do, but yet eventually didn't get anything for it other than the fact that I was the first. You don't get paid for that. And I guess they paid me lip service. And so at some point in my life, for me, when my son was born, I chose to move away from home because I wanted to build a life of my own, not contingent about around what everybody else in my family was doing. And they couldn't for the life of them understand that. And I didn't care because my goal was to build my family and to build my wealth the way I wanted to. But anyway, I've been in, like I said, I've been in this contemplative state of reflecting, figuring out a path forward. I'm in my eighth house. I've been in my eighth house for the last 2 years. So transition and change is everywhere. You know what's given me solace at this point in my life is that back in my 20s, when I was looking forward to these moments here and now, I saw my life being completely different as most people always do. I expected to be married. I expected to have more than one child. There is so much that didn't go according to plan, but it went according to the way it was supposed to, if that makes sense. Because that was my life life path, and that was the journey that I was supposed to walk in because of the way things turned out. Considering that is just allowing me to reflect on how we build going forward and how we get the bag. And as I am preparing to continue to teach, to share wisdom in regards to building wealth, my philosophy on consumer debt has changed drastically. I used to believe in it, now I don't. Is there a way for you to use it effectively to get a house? Absolutely, but you don't need $100,000 in credit lines to prove that you can get a house. You can take $3,000 credit cards, pay them on time for 2 years, and you got $3,000 worth of possible debts if you run it up, but you can always pay it off. You don't need all of what they keep telling us that we need. How much do you really need to make in regards to money? You got to figure that number out for you, figure out what makes that work. How much are you really going to continue to buy? Because goodness, there is only so much consuming that you can do. Our whole economy is built on consumerism. Isn't there a better way? Like, for Americans, shopping is literally a hobby. Going into debt is literally a hobby because that is what we were taught when we were growing up. Is there anything wrong with shopping? No. Is there anything wrong with consuming? No. I think the challenge becomes when we have overconsumption of things, that therein lies the challenge. But anyway, we are approaching 30 minutes and I've been literally just on a soapbox because I wanted to talk about some things that were coming up for me and my clients, coming up for me in my life as I'm contemplating the next phases of our lives, contemplating that the fact that, my son is going to be a young adult in a year. He turned 17 in less than 2 months. And we have so much that we have to get done. And we've been working slowly, but we just have stuff that we need to get done and take care of. And so I want to challenge you to think differently. I know they gave us the blueprint, but that blueprint is so past messed up. It's wrong. Is some parts of it right? Yeah, it is. But a lot of that shit that they gave us as a blueprint as being our forefathers, y'all, is so fucked up. It's ridiculous. Like, that's a whole nother story for another day. There has to be a better way for us to live that we're not creating people who are $500,000 in debt for going to school. I remember my first year in grad school at Vandy. One of the guys, he had come from a different state, and his exact words, this is 20 years ago, remember? His exact words were, we were talking about how much school costs because it was literally like up close to in excess of 30 grand a year to be at that school. And his response was, I'm already $80,000 in debt. What difference is it going to make? I might as well just keep going. And I remember looking at him and thinking like, wow, so you just don't care? And I think at that point, for my undergrad, even with scholarships and stuff, I may have been like $20,000 in debt from undergrad, which is not a lot of money. But to a student who's graduating who ain't got no job, that's a ton of money, y'all. But I just remember thinking, so is that the sentiment across our culture? Is that having the attitude towards school is that you just go into debt with the hope that one day it's going to pay off? It makes no sense. You pay all this money to get a degree. Again, I am going to talk about the fact that I maybe have used my degree 5 times in the last 19 years when somebody has asked to verify it, I guess. But you get into these corporate jobs, these top corporate institutions, and then you find out that the people who are working next to you barely have a high school degree. And you're sitting up there thinking like, why are they here? And I did it the quote unquote right way. And they're sitting here next to me. Wonder how much money they make. Do they make more money than me? Because that's literally what it turns into. Because you end up in the same place in regards to being in a corporation or whatever career path you take. I'm talking from my experience. And so you got to figure out how to do this shit and how to do it smartly so that it's actually really making you money. And you got to do it in a way that doesn't necessarily cause you to go broke in the process. And then you got to do it in a way that allows you to keep on trying until you figure out something that works that's going to make you money. That is all for my soapbox for today. I just hit 32 minutes and that's so unlike me. As I mentioned earlier, head over to Rashida.ai, grab your millionaire guide, and then also leave us a 5-star review if you've enjoyed the episode and share it with a friend so it can help our listenership grow. Until then, I will see you in the next episode.